On this continent, this is the only place this really occurs. We hope the greater impacts of what we're doing is to highlight this really unique ecological feature. So much of our science is focused on the laboratory and small little details that it's really great to get out into the field. You're outside and you can see the wildlife, feel the rain, feel the wind, be part of the environment rather than just our day-to-day of classroom, office, laboratory. We're trying to understand the processes that remove harmful chemicals from these wetlands. The prairie pothole region extends from central Canada down through North and South Dakota. It stops in northern Iowa. It was formed during glacial retreat.
Glaciers receded, they carved out what we call prairie potholes, or small ponds, or in some cases small lakes. Looking down from above is a patchwork of grassland and different types of wetlands.
My connection to this land is pretty visceral. I grew up here, I'm 4 generations deep into it. It was my great-grandfather's, and he came with 3 brothers. First homestead on this place that we have right now was filed in 1903. In the early 1920s, my great-grandfather and granddad and great-uncle, all 3 of those men passed away in a span of about 17 or 18 months. So it's my grandmother and great-grandmother and 3 little kids that kept this ranch at that point in time. All the hardships in the 1930s of being a widow with 3 little kids, it was important enough to her that she never sold the ranch and knew that it was something that we wanted to keep as a family legacy. About 90% of it is still native range, has never been plowed or cultivated. We're about half what we call upland pastures and half of what we call native prairie meadows. The meadows are those areas where the potholes are. Our wetlands work like a sponge in absorbing water and infiltrating water, and they also filter the water. The wetlands that we have here are like nature's kidneys. They take pollutants that may have come off of the soil and they collect them and they kind of dissipate that.
The fieldwork is definitely very challenging. I'm not really an outdoorsy person, but I know that this research is really impactful, and so it's worth it. We use a boat to go into the middle of the prairie potholes, and we collect sediment samples from the bottom of the lake using an Ekman dredge. We bring the sediment up to the surface, we put that sediment into bottles, and then we store those bottles on ice.
This project started because we were interested in what happens to pesticides that run off of farm fields. The study evolved from there to look at carbon because we realized, in collaboration with Mike Wilkins, that some of these wetlands were putting out a lot of methane, but other wetlands might be sequestering carbon dioxide, which would reduce carbon output. And we realized we really didn't understand the full breadth of the microbiology in these systems, and we didn't understand how the carbon moved in and out of these wetlands. We also realized that another unique feature of these wetlands is that the waters contain oxygen and the sediments don't.
Wetlands store a lot of carbon in the sediments. The wetlands that I study are usually in colder, wetter climates, which means that a lot of carbon is stored in these environments. And so as a result of climate change, there's the potential for all of this carbon to be released into the atmosphere, which impacts global warming.
Our weather seems awfully variable, and maybe it always has been, but probably more so now.
2021 will end as the third driest on record in Bismarck, only behind some of the Dust Bowl years.
So last year we had dry with fires, and now it's flooding. So it's up and down. It's like the crazy weather, I think, around the whole world, kind of seeing that here too.
We had the worst drought we'd ever had last year. 1997, we probably had 100 inches of snow. 2010, I think we had 110 inches of snow. And now these last several years, we've gone with like almost no snow.
The fires were mostly north of us in Canada, but the smoke affected everything.
It's feast or famine, it seems like. But part of what we do on this ranch is try and build resiliency. The potholes are like our storage system, and when we get excess moisture, it's going to be stored there. And the way the wetlands work absolutely get us through a drought, because it's going to mean there's something green there that the cattle can eat.
In this study, we're expecting to find that when the oxygen meets the sediment, we create reactive species that degrade the carbon in the water. And this will provide food for the bacteria, which will explain some of the high rates of methane that we see emitting from these wetlands. We hope to be able to make some prediction as to whether these wetlands will produce more methane as climate changes over time, or whether there's some other microbiology that we don't understand that might lead them to actually sequestering carbon. The beautiful thing about science is that we have a prediction, and it's likely that it would increase the methane fluxes, but we're often surprised by these things and find the opposite result of what we're expecting.
Climate change is something that's very important for me. As a first-generation college student, being able to do this feels like I'm also bringing along my family. I've always been drawn to science, I've always been drawn to chemistry, and so I'm studying climate change, but I'm doing that by studying the chemistry that's happening in soil and water in prairie potholes. The impacts of this research are that we're going to get a better picture of how these prairie potholes are contributing to the global carbon cycle. Being able to contribute my time and research and energy towards something that's impacting everybody is why this is so important to me.
Our role, for those of us that kind of understand the value of this ecosystem, is to make sure that everyone realizes the value. You can watch the sunrise in the morning or your sunset in the evening, and there's life there. You hear the frogs, you hear the ducks, you hear the meadowlark. And that is more valuable than a couple more acres of crop. So we're just glad that they're there.
On a project like this, collaboration is really important. It started with a phone call from Yo Chin, who's a professor at the University of Delaware. This work couldn't have happened without all of the collaborators and the students over the years who have participated, as well as the National Science Foundation, who has funded most of this work. And then beyond that, at this particular site, the USGS has been a critical partner because they operate and manage this site, and they have decades of data. We couldn't have done it without them and their expertise.
This landscape, I believe, is like no other. These grasslands are unique, and the water system here is unique, and I believe they need to be protected. For me as a private landowner, I feel that's kind of my charge in life, is to make sure that this ecosystem is intact when I'm gone from this earth. And I think it's important, and I want to help others realize how special this place is. It's not like any other place in the world.